One. What's going on, everyone? It's the My Aggie Nation Podcast. We're here this week with the usual crew over there with the Eagle, Alex Miller. What's going on, Alex?
Not a lot, Travis.
And then down there, Zach Taylor, WTAW. We were just reminiscing about old Aaron Carter songs.
Wait a minute. No. Oh, yeah. Yours was. Yeah. Yes. I was starting to sing the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song, and then of course Aaron Carter had to come into that as well. So
always. So anyway, big win for the Aggies. They travel up to Mizzou this past weekend, and it's really the run game that's all they needed to beat the Tigers, a Tiger team that is literally last in the nation in run defense, or at least was entering the game. Zach, initial takeaways from the Aggies win.
It's what A&M needed to do. It never felt like Missouri was in it. I think that was the biggest thing. You couldn't go on the road, though you were on the road, I should say, and let Mizzou kind of hang around. You had to go out and take care of business if you're Texas A&M, and that's in fact what they did. Now, all of that being said, was it flashy? No. Was it exciting? No. Did you sit there and think, wow, this team has really turned the corner? No. I think anything after that Alabama game was going to be a little bit of a letdown as far as the excitement of the fans. But I mean, it was just kind of a ho-hum. We went to Columbia. We took care of business. We beat a pretty bad Missouri team, and we're now 5-2 on the year after everybody, including myself, thought it was going to at least be 4-3. But there they are.
Good to see the run game getting a little bit featured. I know that they've been good all season. First game where the run game won the game for them, hands down. Second half, they stacked the box a little bit. And I think it was just kind of an overall meh performance from Zach Calzada. Not bad, not great, just kind of meh. Alex, what did you see from Zach?
Yeah, they could have easily just ran the ball probably 60 times and scored 60 points. But it was pretty clear that, there were times where Jimbo wanted Zach to make some throws. He had so many open swing routes out of the backfield and missed a handful of them that could have gone for 20 yards every single time. It just seems like, as much as Zach has come along, there's still those moments where he's missing the simple stuff, but then again, the story I wrote on my sidebar from Saturday, he makes a throw to Anais Smith over the middle on 3rd and 17 to move the chains on a drive that really helped A&M put the game away in the third quarter when Missouri, Zach, you said it, they just really never came out with any heat or energy. And in that third quarter, there was a slight sense of momentum on the Missouri sideline. But then when A&M scored that touchdown to go back up 21, it was game over. So, Zach having the ability to make that kind of play after taking a sack of loss of 17, I mean, you see the growth, but, you still see it's still a work in progress at the same time.
Zach Taylor always has the ability to make some plays. Isn't that right?
Oh, yeah. I'm always in. Put me in, coach. I can go out there and get it done for the team.
Defensive. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, real quick, Alex did bring up those swing passes in the screens, and that was something I'd asked Jimbo about when we got to meet with him on Monday, and he said that was something that they had practiced a ton, enough to where he was making jokes in practice, saying, "Are we going to run any other offensive plays?" He said that they did great, they executed well in practice, and then I don't know if it's nerves, if it's jitters, what the issue is, but yeah, Calzada missed some big time wide open throws. And there was also the one with Devon Achane on a wheel route that if he had hit him in stride, that was a touchdown, and instead ended up underthrowing him a little bit. So I wouldn't say that he regressed. It's hard to say that, but he certainly didn't have the kind of performance that he put up against Alabama. That's for certain.
Other thing to note that we picked out, he did have a knee brace on his left knee, the one that took the shot at the end of the game against Alabama. You don't know how much that might have been affecting things, making things a little bit different with his mechanics, but he was wearing that, didn't wear it against Alabama. So moving on from here, South Carolina, A&M is, I believe, 21-point favorites. What is there to learn? What is there to glean from this team in this 2-game stretch against some of the bottom feeders in the SEC?
I think for me, can A&M win 2 games and kind of, dominate start to finish? You said it, Travis. South Carolina and Missouri, they're not very good teams. And A&M's already lost to the 2 teams that were picked 6th and 7th preseason in the West. How are they going to get fair back to back against, these 2 East teams? They passed the test last Saturday. South Carolina hasn't scored a touchdown on this A&M team in 3 games, or 2 games, the last 2 games, excuse me. And so, I think last week it was more that game kind of reminded me more of how A&M won games last year. It was methodical. Their opponents at times just weren't really in it. But maybe it wasn't as flashy as you would think. And that was kind of a talking point at the end of the season where, College Football Playoff Committee was maybe looking at A&M in a certain way. But, can A&M go out start to finish and kind of dominate a game against an inferior opponent? They're favored by 21 points. They covered the spread last week. Can they do it again this week? That's just kind of what I'm looking for. Can A&M dominate a game against a team that they should beat pretty handedly?
Yeah, I'm all on board with what Alex was saying. I mean, you go out there and it's a night game. You're back at home after the fan base has kind of gotten this re-energized fan base after you've just knocked off Alabama a couple of games ago. You've won 2 in a row now. Can you make it 3 in a row heading into the bye? And again, you are heavily favored, much like they were against Mississippi State, much like they were against Arkansas, and they just came out flat. Now, I'm not saying that South Carolina is on the same level as those 2 other teams. I do think that the Bulldogs and the Razorbacks are better teams. But that being said, you've got to come out. You've got to be able to play well. I think what fans want to see is a dominating defense and an offense that scores quickly. And you look at these last 2 games, these last 2 wins that A&M's had, including against Bama, they scored quickly. It was a deal where they got off to a hot start. I know that's something that Jimbo Fisher has reiterated quite a bit during his press conferences. I think fans want to see that again. First, second drive, the Aggies are finding the end zone, and the defense is playing almost shutout ball. You could look back and see against Mizzou, especially with that 97-yard drive, there were times that the Aggie defense, it just seems like 1 or 2 series a game against those kinds of teams. They just, I'm not saying that they take the series off, but you're just sitting there scratching your head going, where's the dominant defense that you're seeing the rest of the game? And they somehow disappear for 1 or 2 series, but you want to see a full ball game going into a bye. That way you can have some really good feels going into the rest step week.
I agree with you, Zach.
Thanks, Travis.
I'm having mute button issues. I think that seeing a full, complete 60-minute game is something I talked about on our little post press conference recap that I think is going to be very important to them. But I also, the thing that really interests me is there could be a lot said about Zach Calzada and hitting some of his targets on the little screens, little passes to the flats, being a little more accurate. I think the thing that's most important to watch with him is trying to minimize the turnovers, because every single one of his starts this year, he's thrown an interception, plus 1 against Kent State when he came in late in that game, 6 total this year. And while South Carolina's offense is miserable, their defense is pretty good, and it's one of the best ball hawking defenses in the SEC. And so for an offense that is struggling, and it's even something that they've struggled with in games past, but giving them a short field is one way to keep them in a game that they should have no business being in. And so it'll be very interesting to see how he matches up with a team that can force turnovers, especially interceptions this week. I that's just maybe that next step in maturation with the young quarterback.
Yeah, they even pointed it out. Sorry, Alex, if you're going to step in there, but they even pointed it out on the broadcast that, Calzada has not gone a game without throwing a pick. Can he play a full, clean ball game? That's a big question coming in.
So we are, what is it? We're how many games into the season now? I can always count. Seven games into the season. 7. We are at that halfway point. Let's talk through who is some of the standout players. Well, let's maybe pick 2 standout players that the Aggies have this year that you think have overachieved, exceeded expectations, kind of the MVPs, could be any of the above? Alex, we'll start with you.
Well, it's the first one's got to be Antonio Johnson. I mean, he's been arguably A&M's best defender this whole season. Let me pull up some stats. He's been playing that nickel all season, but he's been very, very good in coverage. When guys catch balls on him, not a lot of yards after catch. He's making tackles and wrapping up very quickly. He's very good about covering, hit pocket. Pull up these stats here, and yeah, thinking about last week, he had his first career interception going back home against Missouri. Coming back to his home state. That was a big game for him, and he's leading the Aggies in tackles, which is very impressive with 47. He's been used in blitzes at times. He's just all over the place. He is that guy that A&M it turns to. When they played Arkansas, Traylon Burks had that huge first half. Well, they came out in the second half, and Antonio Johnson was marking him up man to man the whole time before he left with an injury. And Traylon Burks only had one target in the second half, and that was when I think Tyreek Chappell was covering him. So the Athletic, I think, came out with their midseason All-American list today, and Antonio was on there, and deservingly so. He's a guy that has played sound game in and game out, and a guy that A&M's turned to. So he's definitely the one that I would say has definitely exceeded expectations.
I'm going to pick two. I'm going to get one from offense and one from defense. Okay. So offense, and I might be still in Travis's here. Jalen Preston. I think it's a guy that, he's been waiting his turn, and he has come up big for the Aggies, and he's caught almost everything that's been thrown at him. And he really has kind of proven to be a reliable go-to for kind of an unexperienced quarterback, especially with so many injuries on that wide receiving core. And then defensively, you talk about injuries. I mean, I don't think we're talking about it enough, but two or three of A&M's starting defensive backs are out for the rest of the year. I mean, they're dealing with injury right now, and they were really going to lean heavily on Miles Jones to be that other cover corner, and now he is out for the rest of the season. Tyree Chappell's played very well as a true freshman. I mean, you talk about getting thrown into the fire, and we had heard about how talented he was. You hear that about a lot of these freshmen, these true freshmen, but he has gone out there and he's played pretty well. So I think you got to give Tyreek Chappell a lot of props on the defensive side of the ball.
I think that, yeah, you basically all two stole my two, so I'll pick two more out of the hat. Give me, and this is, I know here at the My Aggie Nation podcast, we are offensive line experts, so we know all things offensive line. But give me Layden Robinson, only for the sheer fact that he seems to be one of the biggest stabilizing forces on that line, whether it be just getting everyone into the right positions that they are able to succeed better, or if he has that much of an impact. But when he was out, that's when things kind of fell apart for that offensive line a little bit, and getting him back in seems to be a little bit of a stabilizing force. You have to kind of throw Bryce Foster in there a little bit as well. He wasn't necessarily great in some of his snaps early on, but for a true freshman stepping in at such a key position, the last two games he's been solid and someone that the Aggies have really needed. So those two guys have been two that have impressed me at times throughout the season for what they've been able to do. And then kind of an underrated one on the defensive side, Tyree Johnson has been kind of a force getting in the backfield on the defensive side and putting a lot of pressure on the quarterback, especially in the Alabama game. So he's one that's kind of made my list of maybe unexpected standouts of the first half. So 21-point spread this week does do the Gamecocks cover.
Want me to go first, Alex?
Go for it.
No. No, I don't think so. I mean, I would be lying to you if I told you that I'd seen every single one of South Carolina's games, but I mean, offensively, I just don't think that they're there. Now, will the Aggies play a perfect game on their side of the ball, on the offensive side of the ball? I don't think so. But I still being at home, you're in front of what should be a pretty raucous crowd, I guess. I mean, like I said, it's a re-energized fan base following the win over Bama. The bottom trophy is on the line, okay, folks. You can't just walk in and just expect that you're going to get it for yet another year. But either way, I think A&M is gonna have kind of a statement to make before the bye week, and so I think Jimbo Fisher is gonna throw out some things out there, and they'll be looking to put up some points. So yeah, I think they win by more than 21 to the Aggies.
And for those of you who don't know what the bottom trophy is, we'll explain that a little bit more in our second segment. Alex, what's your pick?
I'll say South Carolina covers. 21 points is a lot, and South Carolina's got a good enough defense, I think, to keep A&M under 40 points. Just looking at the scores these last few weeks, and it could be a deal where A&M's up 31-10 late in the third or fourth quarter, and a little backdoor cover field goal. Although, hey, Kent State tried to do that earlier this season, and they doinked it off the uprights. So who knows? Maybe South Carolina won't. But yeah, I think that A&M it'll be a game where it's never in question, but it could be a game kind of like last weekend where it felt like A&M could have won a lot bigger of a margin than they actually do.
Since I'm like hosting this thing right now and I make all the rules, I'm going to change the rules for me and say I'm giving a conditional pick. If A&M turns the ball over more than once, South Carolina covers. If they don't turn if once or fewer, they do not cover. I think that if South Carolina can get a couple of short fields, they'll be able to produce points out of it, and that certainly might help in that regard. But otherwise, not a chance. That has been our first segment. We have very special guest to give you the South Carolina angle. Alex, introduce our special guest for the next segment and take us to the break.
Yeah. Coming up next, we'll be talking with Ben Portnoy. He covers all things South Carolina football team for the state newspaper in Columbia. We'll be back here in a moment.